Alright guys, welcome back to Labapalooza. The adventure continues with our second lab, which means our second sign of a chemical reaction. Today's sign of a chemical reaction is temperature change. When you mix two chemicals together and they heat up or cool down, that is the sign that a chemical reaction has taken place. Now there's two kinds of chemical reactions that change temperature. One is called an exothermic reaction. Remember that exo means out, so you should think of an exothermic reaction as being one that releases heat out into the environment. So when you mix these two chemicals together, they heat up the things around them. The other kind of temperature changing reaction is an endothermic reaction. Endothermic meaning in, because they take in heat from their surrounding environment. So an endothermic reaction will cool down the liquid around it. You'll see the temperature drop if you're using a thermometer. Today's reaction involves two household chemicals that you can actually try at home. But because one of these guys, if it gets in your eyes, can cause a lot of irritation, we're, in addition to covering our clothes with an apron, we're also going to be wearing goggles today. Now these goggles are going to cover up your eyes, seal things up, and also make you look super cool. Now keep in mind that if you take off your goggles during the lab, you're going to be kicked out of the lab and you'll lose points in classcraft. Because the whole point of these goggles is to keep your eyes safe. They can't do that when they're not covering up your eyes. So, what are the safety restrictions that we have to worry about? Well, as I mentioned, one of the chemicals we're working with today does sometimes cause irritation, so we're going to make sure we wear this the entire time. The other thing is a thermometer. We're going to be working with thermometers today because we're looking at temperature change. Thermometers are made of glass. The chemical inside is alcohol. It's not going to hurt you. But because they're glass, if they fall or hit something hard, they will break and be sharp. They're also kind of expensive. So one member of your team is going to be in charge of making sure that nothing bad happens to your thermometer. They're going to treat this little baby like it's their own child, and they're going to make sure that it stays safe, okay? Whenever you're not using it, you can put it in the little holder, the little sleeve. That'll keep it from having any kind of damage. When you are using it, make sure one person holds on to it the whole time. So what is today's reaction? Well, remember reactants and products. Today's reactants are on your screen right now. They include calcium chloride, which is a chemical that's sold in stores as damp rid because it absorbs humidity from the air. Calcium chloride, and then the other reactant is water. And as you can see, when they mix together, they create some substances that we don't really care about. But the big thing is they release heat into the environment. That means the temperature is going to go up. So what is it that we're trying to do today? Well, your challenge today is inside this graduated cylinder to create the biggest change in temperature that you can. So starting with room temperature, how high can you make it get? How hot can it get? You're going to use those two ingredients, water and calcium chloride. The calcium chloride is a white colored powder, flakes sort of. They're going to go in the weigh pan, you're going to weigh them out, and you're going to add them to the graduated cylinder carefully because they're going to want to fly everywhere. They also will stick to a graduated cylinder that's wet. Just know that's going to happen, it's not a big deal. And then you're going to add water from this little graduated cylinder. Now how does it get into the little graduated cylinder? You have to carefully add it from the faucet. You're going to add the calcium chloride and then the water, and then you're going to quickly put your thermometer in there. And you're going to use the thermometer to stir the two chemicals together. And while you're stirring, you're going to read the temperature on the thermometer, keeping a track of how high it gets. So you want to know the starting temperature right away as soon as you put it in, and the highest temperature that it gets to. Those are what you're going to write down. And when you're done, you're going to clean up by rinsing everything out, returning it to the state you found it in. You're going to answer two questions as part of this lab. So make sure you know the answers to these two questions. Number one, what kind of reaction was this, exothermic or endothermic, and how do you know? What kind of reaction was this, exothermic or endothermic, and how do you know? And the second question you have to answer is, what was your recipe? How much calcium chloride and how much water did it take to get the maximum change in temperature? And why do you think that was the right amount?